there. Welcome to Grace at Your Place. It's so good to be together. We are going to worship together now. So Lord, we thank you that you are with us. We thank you that you want to meet with us wherever we are right now. Would you help us to be aware of you as we come to worship? Amen. Awesome. Let's worship together.
There is a sound I love to hear. It's the sound of the Savior's robe as he walks into the room where people pray, where we hear praises, he hears faith. There is a sound I love to hear. It's the sound of the Savior's robe as he walks into the room where people pray, where we hear worship, he hears faith. I thought by now they'd fall, but you have never failed me yet. Waiting for change to come, knowing the battle's won, for you have never Let's declare that one more time. I've seen you move. I've seen you move. You move the mountains, and I believe I'll see you do it again. You made a way where there was no way, and I believe I'll see you do it again. I've seen you move. You move the mountains, and I believe I'll see you do it again. You made a way where there was no way, and I believe I'll see you do it again. I'll see you do it again.
I choose this day. I choose this day to be grateful, Lord. I give you praise with an open heart. I'm waking up to heaven. Come on, let's sing that. I'm waking up to you. I choose this day. I choose this day to be grateful, Lord. I give you praise with an open heart. I'm waking up to heaven. I'm waking up to you. I'm waking up. I'm waking up to heaven. I'm waking up to you for always. Oh, for always being good. I'm telling you, thank you, Jesus. Oh, I'm telling you, thank you. Oh, I'm telling you, thank you. Oh, I'm telling you, thank you. I'm telling you, thank you. I'm telling you, thank you. All you've done for me, I'm telling you, thank you.
Hi and welcome to Grace at Your Place. It's great to have you with us today. And today we are looking at the issue of cannabis legalization. It's one of the referendum questions that's coming up in the election, not too far away. And I've got some special guests with me today. First of all, I've got Jake, who for a long time had some very negative issues in a lifestyle with marijuana. And also I've got Dr. Brandon Strange, who is an expert. He's a psychiatrist that deals with children and young people, and especially who have substance issues in their lives. First of all, welcome to you guys. Thank you so much for coming. You guys are real experts, one who's lived it and one who is helping people who are living with it. So thank you so much. Jake, we'll start off with you. Tell us a bit about what happened to you. You went to university. I'll say this for you, as you won't say it of yourself, but you're a bit of a genius, had a very high IQ, going into med school. What did you want to be?
I actually wanted to be a clinical psychologist. So I was really interested in brain damage, how the brain reacted to different events, how it reacted to trauma and how it changed people's personalities, that kind of stuff. It's fascinating and I just love how the brain works. So.
And you're especially interested in neuroscience?
Neuroscience. So, yeah, I didn't work hard enough for the first year. I cruised through and just relied on my intellect, but not on study, and got through first year, but didn't get into med school. So I went down the neuroscience and psychology path, and that was the second year of university.
So tell us about getting into marijuana at university and what effect that had on you.
So, yeah, why I got into marijuana was probably my friends before university. I tried it when I was at high school, not really a huge amount, but they'd been smoking since they were 13, 14. So I entered the muso art scene. We hung outside the art department, the music department, and they all smoked weed. And so I ended up just by osmosis trying it. And then... yeah, so at university, I didn't touch it for the first year and didn't really touch it for the first half of the second year either.
So you got on with a crowd that were using marijuana. Mm-hmm. What effect did it start to have on you?
Nothing at first. I was very recreational. I thought it was just something that I enjoyed. It was like the law is, it's a recreational use and it's about using it because you enjoy it. After a very, very short time, it started to have a negative impact on my memory, my concentration, motivation, and then it started to have worsening effects from then on. And by the time I was sort of near the end of my second half of the year, I had started having like psychotic events, started hearing voices, started seeing things.
And were you taking any other drugs at that stage?
No.
And had you ever had psychosis before that?
Never.
So you're a perfectly normal, intelligent young guy going off to be a psychotherapist, specialising in neuroscience. The thing that changed was taking marijuana.
Absolutely.
And what was psychosis like?
Psychosis is, I guess the best way to describe psychosis is everyone has irrational thoughts. They might feel like people are talking about them, or they might have a thought which is just, if you're in the high, and say, for example, a really good example is you're in the mall, you're looking at you're on the 6th story building, you're looking down, you're like, I wonder what it'd be like to jump off there. Now, probably most people thought, I wonder, like they've had that thought, but they actually never act on it. There's the difference between reality and an idea is that when you don't have psychosis, you might have an irrational thought, but you can recognize it as irrational. Psychosis is when you have irrational thoughts and you don't recognize them as irrational. You start to believe that is reality. And that's what I started to believe. I started to be terrified of things, thought people were talking about me, thought I was being filmed, thought people were following me around. I remember after I'd left university, I had a conversation, I wrote down things, and I thought people were filming me and I would hear responses. I was writing things down, but it was actually, all going on inside my head, or,
So you dropped out of university because of this?
I did, yeah.
And what happened? You went home and...
Went home and still smoked weed. It took me a long time to stop because I was still in the... I guess I would have been, I'd say addicted, but I didn't really think about that. I was still chasing that really enjoyable, fun aspect that I had at the start.
I had a chat to your mum with your permission.
Yep.
And she told me you came to such a state that she would need to, you became like a child.
Yep.
She would have to tell you to have a bath. She would have to help you to get dressed. She would have to,
Yep.
You would ask her common questions about what should I do today? And
Yep.
you became, she said, you regressed back into childhood. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. Yep. Yep.
And you went along to get some medical help, and the medical people basically recognised straight away what was going on, that it was a very common thing. Tell us about the medical experience.
So at that stage, I'd actually stopped smoking, but I was still in denial that marijuana, in my mind, I wanted to, at some point, smoke weed again because I really enjoyed it. And I was talking to them about marijuana, and they were saying, Jake, if you continue to do this, you're going to get schizophrenia. And I was like, no, I'm not. That's fine. And it took probably 3 or 4 months of talking to them and to actually recognise it was a problem.
Did you realise how bad you were?
No. Yes and no, but no, because I relied on my intellect, and clearly that wasn't enough. I was down the rabbit hole so far that I hadn't seen how far I'd fallen. And by that point, it was too late. I remember having certain points where I just thought, oh my gosh, what is going on? And having points where I'm just snaps of being like, this is horrible stuff, but also being addicted and not being able to get myself off it.
So, Brandon, as a doctor, is this a familiar story to you?
Yes. It's interesting. Most young people who I've met who have substance issues, they'll go, no, I'm fine. I know I'm not well, but as soon as I get better, I'm going to go back. It's not the drugs. It's other things. And also their lives being ruined, meaning not forever, but the things they're trying to achieve, the things they're trying to do, getting derailed, and then having to claw back to get to what they want to be.
A lot of people are saying marijuana is just a mild drug. One of the politicians said it doesn't turn your teeth green, nothing much to worry about, like having half a glass of wine. Is that medically accurate?
No, it's a substance. It's illegal for a reason. And so the grade of marijuana that we're using now has high amounts of the hallucinogenic portion of it, low amounts of the kind of medicinal stuff that people say. And also the issue is we already have alcohol and people have significant problems, and that's legal. This is already illegal, and people still have significant issues with it as well. And so to say that it's mild, what I'd say is that outside of your daily living things that you need to do to sustain yourself, most things that we put in our bodies that are either to excess or that are synthesized, and if it's not done in the right, appropriate way, are not good for you. So, I prescribe medications, but I'm not going to just say, oh, take this medicine and that medicine. Oh, I'll just take it. It's pretty easy. Well, no, it's for a particular reason, because all medications, anything, have side effects. If you take a Panadol actually can hurt your liver. If you take too much of it, it can cause permanent liver damage. And so even though it helps with headaches, it helps with these things, it's not the safe, benign thing that, and so cannabis, I would not say is a safe, benign drug that everyone should have.
Is it addictive?
Yes. So the issue is addiction comes in from a couple different ways. One way is that many people, depending on the age and where you are, it becomes not just a drug you use occasionally. Your brain actually gets reinforced and it feeds those pathways and it actually becomes stronger. Secondly, the more you use, the more your body becomes used to it. It's like alcohol. People who drink alcohol know that if you drink on a regular basis, you don't notice the effects. You drink more with settings. And then also the last thing is that many times people who are using substances, they use them in order to change their reality. They're not happy where they are. And so what happens is the more you do, the more you enter that space, the more you want to stay in that space. And so being a normal life actually becomes harder because that is what you want, that is what you crave. So it's multiple levels.
So you work with young people, children and teenagers, and especially those who have substance issues.
Yeah, I mostly work with teenagers.
And what effect does cannabis have on the teenage brain?
So what I can say is that studies have shown that this is why we don't do the death penalty anymore, because for young people, because they show the brain has not matured. And so your brain, so technically adolescence goes up until mid-20s. And so your brain is still developing. And so when you start using at earlier ages, your brain actually becomes more wired for those pathways. And also, they have shown that chronic cannabis use does decrease IQ of young people. Now, doesn't mean that they're going to not function. It just means that it moves it down.
What about demotivation? Is that a big issue?
Yes. Well, so the things that happen with cannabis, which I think most people don't realize, is this thing called amotivational syndrome, which is you're just there. You don't do anything. You don't want to. People, see these shows with they have the munchies and they're being silly, but actually the person gets kind of wrapped up into the use, and nothing else particularly matters. And then when you do have to do things, it's like, well, it's almost like being a child, as you were saying.
It's more effort.
Yeah, it's much more effort. And it's like, I don't want to do that, or why do I need to? Or you just don't see it anymore. Oh, that's not interesting, or whatever. And so people stop wanting to do, and they also lose the will to do it.
People say that they get a good feeling having marijuana, but marijuana is actually a depressant. Can you explain that?
Well, so there are there's multiple categories, but two major categories of drugs. We have stimulants and depressants. And the reason why people are mellow on marijuana, just like alcohol is depressant, is it kind of slows things down. That's why you get a lot of perceptual things. That's why you don't see people smoking cannabis running around like if they're doing meth and things. But still, it is something that kind of calms the brain, slows down reflexes, slows down thinking. People will tell you, I can think better, I'm able to more concentrate. Well, actually, that's not necessarily accurate. But overall, it is a calming of the brain and a slowing down of the brain as opposed to stimulants which excite the brain.
So that means that people can be very much impaired through driving with marijuana?
Yeah, well, yeah, they can. And I think just like people who are impaired with alcohol, they're like, I'm fine, I can drive, I'm good, and they're actually impaired. And so most people do not understand their level of impairment when they are in the middle of things.
And there's no test for that the police have. So if this is legalised, there's no way for police to be able to tell how impaired a person is.
Well, so they're doing some, like I know there's some things in Australia, they're coming things out that they're going to need to, but this is not something that people regularly use. There are probably lots of people who smoke cannabis who regularly drive.
Sure.
And they don't get caught because if you breathalyze them, they're not going to show up. It doesn't mean it doesn't cause accidents. It doesn't mean that they're not impaired. It is just that you can't detect it. So they're working on that now and getting things in. But in general, But the bigger issue comes in is when you look at our test, like urine tests and things like that. Most of what we have mostly now shows that a person has used, as opposed to saying someone's intoxicated like alcohol. Alcohol, you have a blood alcohol level that is you can't be above that. And so, I know they're working on that. I know right now, if you get stopped at one of these stops for sobriety, they're not, swabbing you and saying, "Oh, you've over the limit of THC in your swab. You're getting pulled over."
So how much correlation is there between marijuana and mental illness, especially with young people? Is that a real scientific link there?
So link is a strong word. It's there. So you can say there's association with substance use, early age, with higher mental health issues. Specifically with cannabis, the more frequently you use, the earlier the age, the higher the hallucinogen factor, you'll have higher risk of substance issues and mental health. Because I think part of difficulty also is that because it's kind of underground-ish, it's much, versus alcohol, which is quite there, it's much harder to get accurate. But we do know that there are associations with this.
And with schizophrenia, bipolar?
Well, so if you take a look at many of the young people who have early onset psychosis, there's a large number of them, their substance use issues, specifically cannabis is one. Obviously, you can get meth, you can get synthetic, but both here in New Zealand and in the US, the young people that I have dealt with, cannabis has been the primary driver for those. Well, has been involved, not primary driver, has been involved heavily in those young people who've had psychosis.
Yeah, when I was in the mental health system, and so this is probably the specific area that my mental health nurse was in, he said that 80% of the people that he was dealing with specifically had heavy use of marijuana that had been a factor in their early life or sort of before 25, and they had ongoing mental health illnesses like schizophrenia or bipolar or things like that. He also said that sort of around about 5% of the people that he was dealing with ever actually got out of the mental health system, and that's people who have really strong, really like poor mental health going on into their adulthood. But that's a really shocking and sobering statistic, and this is in New Zealand. That once you get in the mental health system and you're in there as an adult, it's very, very rare that you'll get out. And like Brandon's saying, it's you can't necessarily say there's an absolute link, but you kind of put two and two together and think, there is definitely association here.
Yeah.
My father-in-law worked as a nurse in a mental health ward, and he said that every schizophrenic person that was in when he was there had been a heavy marijuana user. So there's definitely a link there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Gateway drug, Jake? Is marijuana, does it lead to other drugs?
It does. And I think that's a little bit because your brain becomes wired for a high. What we are wired for as humans is to increase things that we enjoy. Once we enjoy something, we're like, oh, that's great, I'm going to do more of it. If that's marijuana, you're going to do more of it, and I guess you're not seeing any negative effects. Then you'll think, okay, well that's fine. Once you get to, like, for example, my friends, when I said that my friends were 13. And they'd been smoking weed since they were 13. When I started smoking weed and I didn't do anything else, they were doing magic mushrooms, ecstasy, opium. They'd done meth. They'd done everything, mescaline, everything you could think of. I remember one of my friends who tried everything possible. He said to me, "I wish I could get as high as you, Jacob, from smoking weed." And I was like, what? Like, he's like, you change into a different person when you smoke. Like, I just can't smoke as much weed as you. Like, I can keep smoking. So I remember one time just smoking and smoking and smoking. I was just like gone. And he was fine. Like, his brain had become so accustomed to smoking weed that he was just like...
So you agree it's addictive?
Absolutely, yeah.
Brandon, you were saying before that when you started out in medical school in the States, you were told that marijuana was just a soft drug, nothing to worry about, and wasn't addictive?
Yeah, well, they said, oh, well, you can't get, there was no marijuana dependence, meaning that the criteria. But I think because it wasn't seen that way. People who use will tell you, and the young people I've dealt with, they'll tell you, they have cravings, they'll have shakes, they'll have night sweats, they have dreams. They go through withdrawal. And they're like, oh, it's only a psychological withdrawal. And that's what they used to say, not a physical. And so the difference comes in is that dependence is dependence, no matter what you want to call it. Whether you say, oh, your heart rate goes up if you don't take it, but it doesn't, the actual same fact that you want it, you crave it, despite it causing you problems, you're still using it. Despite the fact that people around you are telling you how bad you are and how it's affected you, you still use. And so you can say, it's not as bad as alcohol where you can have seizures and all these different things. You're absolutely right. People who say that, you're absolutely right if you say substance addiction to alcohol is less medically dangerous because you don't have those seizures and those withdrawals. That's right. That's absolutely right. But it doesn't take into account that the fact is that, yep, you won't die from withdrawal, but it still is very problematic and it still has people coming back to use.
And what does it do to families?
Well, all substances. So you're talking about substance use. And so you can't specifically say about with cannabis or weed. It's substances because the substance becomes the focus. No one else, nothing else. That is life. And so everyone that you look around is as how are they going to help me get what I want? Not that you're using people, but the substances becomes the biggest thing. And so any parent that'll tell you whether it's alcohol or meth or weed, anything, it impacts in a way because the substance becomes the center of life, not the family, the fondness. It's everyone else is outside. It's the person in the substance.
So if we legalize cannabis...
Would you agree with that? Or
Absolutely, yeah. It's a relationship. And I think that you could describe most of the people that I knew who smoked weed were in love with it. It was actually like they had a relationship with this drug, and that was the center of their lives. They poured their energy, they poured their time. That's what they talked about. That's how they spent their money. It's where their passion was, and that's where they poured their energy. And that that's what gave them the energy back, I guess.
So we're being told that if we legalise this drug, it's going to cut out all the problems, that it's going to mean that we can strictly control it and that the marijuana use is going to go down. Are they telling us the truth, Jake?
No, they're not. When you make something more readily available, you don't decrease the use in the public, in society. I think the reality is that we have a culture in New Zealand where we are very relaxed about marijuana. And we're relaxed about alcohol as well. We've got a drinking culture. And 80% of New Zealanders have smoked weed, and they obviously have smoked weed because they think it's not dangerous. If they thought it was really dangerous, they wouldn't be doing it. If you increase the amount of availability, then you're going to increase the amount of people that are smoking it, and then you're going to increase the amount of people who have problems with it.
Do you agree, Brandon? If we legalise it, is it going to make it just more prolific in society?
Well, yeah. Well, because if you take a look at alcohol, my understanding is New Zealand used to have a higher legal age for alcohol. and they dropped it. And what did that do? That just allowed more people to have. And so I know there are a number of people who we call rule followers, who would be willing to try or do something, but because it's illegal, because you're not supposed to, you don't do it. And when you legalize, that just says, oh, great, I will. You will find that there are a number of people who won't consume alcohol until they get to the age where they're allowed to. Well, I'm allowed to, I will do it. Where even though they probably could before, they said, well, I'm not supposed to. And so when you legalize something, it actually just says it's okay.
It legitimizes it.
Yeah. And so if your parents are doing, so if you take a look at drinking, our children look at what we do and hopefully they pattern our lives, if there's good, off the things that we do. And if our children see us drinking every single day, there's a high likelihood that they will end up with that same pattern. And if cannabis is frequent open, already there are people who are using cannabis around their families, their kids, they're using it and it's illegal. Now the next step really comes in is, how's that going to impact those people who actually probably wouldn't?
Are there children, do you think, that are growing up in homes where there is marijuana already and parents giving marijuana to their kids?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same like with alcohol. There are a number of, as a parent, we know other people whose kids, 15, they're going to parties with alcohol and they're like, all right, you can have 3 or 4 because the law says you can't buy it. Doesn't mean you can't give it. And so, yes, same thing. So with cannabis, definitely.
Does our medical health system have the structure to cope with what could be a big onslaught of mental health issues, especially for young people, if this legalization goes through?
So what I'd say there'd be a lot of unintended consequences. As it stands, if we add another substance in, a psychoactive substance in that we already know can cause difficulty, that is going to increase the burden on the mental health system, in my opinion. Now, we'll see if it legalized what happens, but if you take a look already from the studies where it has been legalized in California and other places, the ratio, even though they have standardized what people are getting, the ratio of the psychoactive is really, really high, which means that when people are getting it, they're getting the good stuff. And the good stuff is also what actually has a higher rate of causing these psychotic breaks and things like that, because it's the potency and it's the frequency. And then also from the standpoint of how much, so a person gets, law says 14 grams. If you can smoke 14 grams in a day, that's a lot of weed.
So that's 40 up to 40 joints a day.
Yeah,
And putting that in perspective, when I was smoking weed, I would smoke 14 grams in 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Wow. So
And
you
I was
could buy
getting
that in a day.
Yeah, if you're smoking half an ounce a day, that's a giant amount.
It is. And so the issue for me is, okay, fine. You say 14 grams. Where does the rest of it go? It's going to funnel. Alcohol disappears from parents' homes because it's there.
How many kids have raided their parents' liquor cabinet?
Yeah, exactly.
Like my wife, she smoked a little bit when she was younger, but she was obviously smarter than me and didn't keep doing it. She said that she had friends whose parents went out the back and smoked with them. Her mum, she said, one of her friends would go out the back with her mum and smoke weed behind the shed, and then they'd get weed off her mum. It's clear.
So the Yes campaigners are saying we're trying to cut down the harm by making it legal and also wanting to open up marijuana cafes, and also in some restaurants it may be licensed restaurants where you can come and BYO. Is that normalising marijuana, or do you think that's achieving the purposes of cutting down the harm?
So when people say harm, the question is, what are you looking at? If you're looking at gangs and those things, yeah. if you are pulling out a resource from where gangs and those criminal elements, yeah, that's one thing. But the issue will come in is that, well, one, they're saying, you can legalize it, so that means young people. If they actually stick to the law, that means it's 20 or older, which means those 19-year-olds down who are smoking cannabis anyway are still going to be going to these illegal places and these illegal people. And so I'm not sure when they're saying the harmful element, what they're talking about. If it's gangs, well, if a person's still 14, 15, 16, 17 and smoking, well, they're either going to get it from their parents, their brother or sister, or someone in their family. And technically, will they be prosecuted for underage, because young people now, if they're caught with cannabis on them, they can be prosecuted.
So, Brandon, if the brain is still developing till your mid-20s, having the cut-off at 20, saying people 20 and above, we're still going to have effects on that developing brain, aren't we?
Yeah. Well, and so we will, but I think the issue is that just like with alcohol and other substances, these things do. And you also talk about vulnerabilities. Mm-hmm. And if you take a look at where most of the time when you see like your schizophrenias and the kind of bipolars, they start coming out usually that age between like 18 and mid-20s. Mm-hmm. And so you're talking about that's a very vulnerable population. And not to say that cannabis will cause that, but you're talking about if you're already teetering, there's anything that can push you over would be an issue.
The Dunedin study showed that people who took marijuana were 4 times more likely to become schizophrenic. If this law were to go through, what do you think would be the consequences?
I think that the consequences would be that we'd have an epidemic of young people presenting with mental health problems, would have more people on the roads having accidents, would have people with less motivation, less productivity, less creativity, would have people withdrawing, would have, not saying, I don't know about whether people are, we have such a problem with suicide in New Zealand that surely that increasing mental health problems in New Zealand is going to be an increase in suicide as well. So, these are all things we really want to avoid. We want to have a productive, every government, full stop, is all about what's their ultimate goal is to increase the productivity of New Zealand. Now, they might have different approaches, but that's really what it is.
Yeah, it's the very best dream that we can have for our young people, that they're stoned and prone to mental illness and losing ambition and all that sort of thing. That's the very best dream that we can come for. I want to close, Jake, by just asking you had a big life change where you came to know Jesus. Can you tell us a bit about that and tell us where you're at now?
Yeah, so I guess my parents were Christians the entire time. They prayed for me and they battled for me, and they did everything that they could to help. And I had encounters with God which really showed me that he was real. And in the midst of those horrible psychotic times, I had kind of experiences where God was just filled me with hope. And I just started to realize that there is an alternative to the voices that are in my head. And the alternative is that it's building life and it's building courage and strength and purpose and personality. And I think for someone who almost lost their personality, became a bit of a zombie, to encounter God and to see just a radical change in a very short period of time, and a long recovery for me. But
and now life is good. You've got the beautiful Brooke and a beautiful little baby Lexi as well. Yeah,
and I'm not saying this is not the end for many people who have experienced this kind of stuff from cannabis. That this doesn't have to be your story. For me, I have a great job. I'm a regional manager. I've worked with the council. I've started my own business. I've bought land overseas. I've travelled. I've got a beautiful family. I own my own house. And I was got a great network of friends around me, and that is because I've had support and faith and God really filling me with strength and healing me, and but a huge amount to do with the community around me, and it's incredible.
Just love to thank you both for being here today. Thank you so much, Jake, for telling your story. Dr. Brandon Strange, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. And we just hope for a better New Zealand and a better future for our young people. So thank you so much for tuning in today. God bless you all. Mā te wā.
I'm caught up in your presence. I just wanna sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never wanna leave. Oh, I'm not here for blessings. Jesus, you don't owe me anything more than anything that you can do. I just want you. I'm sorry when I've just gone through the motions. I'm sorry when I just sang another song. Take me back to where we started. I open up my heart to you. And I'm sorry when I've come with my agenda. I'm sorry when I forgot that you're enough. Take me back to where we started. I open up my heart to you. I'm caught up in your presence. I just wanna sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never wanna leave. Oh, I'm not here for blessings. Jesus, you don't owe me anything more than anything that you can do. I just want you. I'm caught up in your presence. I just want